How are you, Adam and John?
Hey, can't complain.
I am doing pretty well.
Glad to hear everyone is doing amazing. So today we are going to be chatting about sustainability and how tech startups are driving the green revolution. So happy to be here with you all today. My name is Corina Hierro, and I am a global startup scout with Techstars. And this is just a reminder for the audience, as you are watching today, feel free to leave all of your questions in the Q&A box if you are here joining us in Zoom. And if you are joining us through LinkedIn, make sure to leave your questions on the comments, and we will leave some time at the very end to answer all of those questions. So now I would like to introduce John Hill and Adam Phillips. Thank you so much for joining today, and thank you so much for your time and using this time to share your expertise. So can you briefly tell us a bit about your backgrounds?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, Adam. So I am John Hill. I am the evangelist for Techstars. It's a fancy term for storyteller. Travel around the world speaking at conferences, ecosystems in higher education. I was just speaking in St. John's, Newfoundland for TechNL, a conference supporting entrepreneurs and innovators within that region. I flew into Halifax this morning. I'm about 2.5 hours from the airport in an area called Moncton. And I just randomly called the co-working space, and they let me crash here for a bit to give this talk. So I'm joined by one of my favorite people, great human being, Adam. Adam, why don't you give everybody a little bit of a view of who you are and what you represent at Techstars?
Thanks, John. Yeah, I appreciate the intro. I'm actually from Buffalo, so everybody thinks it's Canada, but it's not actually Canada. It's Buffalo, New York. We're cold like Canada, but not quite Canada. Adam Phillips, I'm a lawyer by trade. Actually was a teacher first, lawyer then, and about 15 years ago, got pulled into a venture-backed startup, and kind of the rest is history. Started angel investing, connecting to the investment community, ultimately did two venture-backed startups. A bunch of others, and here I am at Techstars. Now I'm the managing director for three, technically, actually, both Techstars programs. One, the Baltimore Equitech Accelerator, and then two, Washington, D.C., powered by JP accelerators. So very excited to be here.
So Adam, it sounds like we're going to talk about sustainability today, and
yeah,
you are going to be the driver of it.
Awesome.
I'm going to be more of the guide as we go along. But it would be great to get a view of how you see sustainability in technology and in the entrepreneurial world, and really how it's evolved, because it went from being more of a vertical and then has kind of shifted to a horizontal and cuts through everything now. And that's been a change over the last 5 years or so. So I'd love to your kind of line of sight from that perspective and kind of kick this off from there.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. I love the vertical to horizontal frame, because I think that's exactly right, and something we'll end up focusing on. But like I said, I was a lawyer by trade, and actually the law I did, I primarily worked at DOT. I worked in a couple of political side jobs, but then was at DOT for a long time, and primarily working actually on oil and gas. And so my view into sustainability kind of came, ironically, in some ways, kind of from the other side. But I love the regulatory side of oil and gas and energy. And actually, that work was really fulfilling in a lot of ways, and got to see people working on, again, kind of different pieces of the sustainability portfolio. But it has completely shaped my view in terms of how I come to the question of what sustainability is. Because I do think there is, we talk about a green revolution. We talk about the need for different kinds of energy. Obviously, there's no question that any country like ours that's has a large commercial as well as industrial need obviously needs energy to kind of push it. So that's going to be the main driver of the initial conversation. But I think the word sustainability itself lends itself or lends to kind of a larger definition, which is starting to really be fleshed out. So what does it mean to build something that lasts? And that's kind of been my the way that I've sort of seen this conversation move. Like, whenever you're trying to build something, what are the steps you're taking to make sure that it can last? And obviously, part of that is energy. A part of that is how do you power the machines that make things go? How do you power the buildings? Like the WeWork I'm sitting in right now, how do you power that? And then, but again, like the WeWork, how does the WeWork business model power the WeWork that I'm sitting in now? How do you continue to build something that allows sort of the day-to-day to continue? So that's also sustainability, because you're preserving the work, the business, the people who rely on the business, the customers, the customer needs, all that. So this is I love that vertical to horizontal framing. I think I'm going to refer to that a lot. So I'm stealing that from you, John.
Yeah, more than welcome to, Adam. So knowing that sustainability has become forefront as far as tech entrepreneurship is concerned, what are some of the trends that you've seen really come to life over the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, you know, that shift has really taken place and starts to demonstrate when you think about like the kinds of sustainable businesses that are, and I use sustainable not being mocking, but being, you know, it's more broad than we were talking about initially, but the kind of sustainable businesses that have started to fall under that definition. So, you know, the typical kind of business that used to be that you talk about was an energy business that is still considered obviously a sustainable business. Like a Heliogen, though, is a really interesting version of a sustainable energy business. They've started to focus on like heavy industry, the needs of the fuel and energy needs in heavy industry. Like super applicable kind of across. It's something that you couldn't even have imagined probably even 7, 8, 10 years ago. And some of some of the innovations have started to go around. Okay, well, can we reframe fuel? Like, is fuel, what kind of fuel are we talking about? Whether it be solar powered, whether it be battery powered, whether it be, you know, back to diesel or different kinds of diesel or different kinds of gasoline fuels. Heliogen started to reimagine heavy industries. But then there's also things like kind of the bio industries and the microbiome sorts of focused ones, like a loam. I think it's called Loam Bio is in the, and then there's also one I know about, Microcycle, I believe, is doing this work as well with, you know, focusing on kind of the microbiomes and almost like it's essentially a different kind of fuel, but at a lower level. The Earth has broken down things for years, for obviously eons, and it creates energy. So how can we harness the power of the microbiome as well as, you know, things like the power of mushrooms, you know, how the things, Microcycle is out of Chicago, and I happen to know them. I met them a few years ago. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. And the vision was, and they didn't have it proved out just yet, 5 or 6 years ago, but the vision was, can we take mushrooms and break down construction waste? And initially you think about that and you go, what? That doesn't seem to be a thing. But they proved it. They proved, Joanna Rodriguez is the CEO. She proved it could work. Proved the business model. And then not only was she sort of breaking down something that's bad, like the petroleum-based construction waste, but she was also producing an inert byproduct that she could sell. And in my mind, if she could prove that it worked, and she has proven that it worked, it's like, that's 2 unicorns she's building with one idea. Super interesting stuff, super interesting. But then you also have sort of like left turns, I think, that have started to come in with somebody like, there's a group called AMP Robotics in the space, which is essentially working on trying to better identify, you know, the kinds of things that we throw out. So we've got these massive landfills that are full of all sorts of stuff that we've kind of been indiscriminately throwing out. Well, AMP Robotics is a robotics company. You wouldn't think sustainable initially, but what they're doing is they're identifying recyclable waste. They're also going through and finding things like, you know, there's precious metals and things like your phones. And if we throw out phones, you know, they can kind of pull those things up or discover those and find them and then reuse. So it's like, it's a robotics company, but that's also creating a sustainable path, which is, I think, super impressive. But also, like, it's a great demonstration of going again from that kind of vertical to horizontal view. Like, are we building things that last? Like, can we create industries and can we create practices also that sort of take these things into account? That sustainability is more than just, you know, we want to be able to breathe the air and drink the water, of course, but can we also build an industry that's more hardy because it's sort of circular?
So I'll make the assumption, Adam, that there are a number of early stage companies on this call that are focused on sustainability. And you've seen the pathing from 2, 3 people companies up to, you know, exit, and have also observed some of the obstacles that are going to be in their way. as they're trying to scale their company. So what advice do you have for the assumption that there are startups here who are going to be on that journey and invariably hit some roadblocks along the way?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say really, and it's similar to the advice I give to a lot of startups, but it's probably more important maybe for anybody who's considering a sustainable path. And I would say this for this reason. The vision for sort of a sustainable business tends to be super important up front. It tends to be part of the story. And then that's great. That is sort of a motivator. It can draw certain sets of eyeballs. It can be a niche for you. It can sort of differentiate you at a time when it's important to be differentiated, and that's up front. But really, really important. It's important for every business, but it's really important for any business that sort of is couching itself as sustainable. I think to make sure the initial circle is small. You've got to find a very quick way to validate what you're doing. And you also have to consider not only the science validation, but the market validation, if both of those are applicable. So for instance, you think about an Amp Robotics. Amp Robotics is not just a robotics company. Obviously, they could prove that they're building robots. Robots are an important part of their business. But they also have to prove that the science of their identification tech works. And then they have to prove that there's a market validation for that tech. So it's almost like one more layer that you're adding on to the business because you think it's important because of the sustainability piece. But don't forget to kind of do all the work, I should say. Like the sustainability goal doesn't replace the market validation goal as well, and the need to validate the market. So that to me is always important for anybody who talks about building a sustainable business. Is I love it, convince me, I feel it. But just like I did, 5 or 6 years ago when I first heard about microcycle, I said, okay, well, where's the market for what you're building? And again, for microcycle, they knew it. So any startup, figure out what the market need is. And sometimes, to be fair, the market can seem like it's ignoring the larger need. But in order to sort of get to the larger need, the sustainable need, you have to fill a market demand. That's just true when you start.
Yeah. So the struggle is real. So
Absolutely.
For everybody on this call, again, feel free to put any questions you have in the Q&A. Adam, you've heard me speak before. I do a talk in all our accelerators called The Power of the Network, where I help people navigate relational capital. And if I look at the existing needs of founders, they've really never changed. Funding, talent, customer acquisition, knowledge share, mentorship. But to your point, sustainability has a level of niche. So it's very specific, which means that the investor landscape is going to be specific. Those people who have thesis to support and invest in sustainable companies. Talk about what it's like for a founder to try to raise capital in sustainability in this environment.
Yeah, and as you say, it's difficult no matter what right now. That's just true. I think we're all adapting to some new normals, but at the same time, there's also still there's been a bit of a spasm in the market where everybody's freaking out and just pausing. So we're also just trying to outlast the pause, to be honest. I know a lot of my startups are currently doing this. And actually, I was talking to them about, I'm trying to connect on other projects with funders myself who are, working with my other founders. And I have to keep following up in ways that I didn't used to have to keep following up because everyone's freaking out. So the thing you're feeling is real. I just want to validate that for everybody. But I would say that the conversations that you have as a sustainable business are super important, and you have to know your audience. So if you're building a model that is circular, sustainable, you believe in it, there's sort of you come to it from passion and you come to it from that angle, there will be a certain segment of people who will absolutely pay attention to you, sort of regardless of whatever else you say about the business, because they share that passion. But you have to remember, there's a group of people who you might want to take money from, maybe, that don't have to care about that passion. They don't have to share your passion for it. They just have to understand the story of the business. And so being careful about knowing who you're talking to, how you're talking to them, how you're appealing to them, and also how you tell the story of the business and the opportunity, I think is really important in this realm. Whenever I have founders who are really passionate about anything they're building, I really want them to know that like that is really, really critical. But business is about convincing other people to hear your story. So you have to know and to care about your story. So you have to know, okay, well, the story I care about starts in here, and now I'm going to turn it out, and I'm going to see what other people think of it, and other people kind of get to say what they like, what they don't like, what they want to pay attention to, what they don't want to pay attention to, and that's business because you're involving the community. So much more, or more is the case here in sustainable businesses. The passion part, kind of the cause part of it can absolutely be part of the story, but you have to remember who you're talking to know kind of how to tell that story in a way they can hear it. So,
so lean into the storytelling a little bit more because that's one of my favorite. Obviously, I'm a storyteller for Techstars, but it's like one of my favorite things to talk about because when you're representing sustainability, you can go deep into the technology, you can go deep into the application, but sometimes, if you're looking at kind of connecting to a lay person and audience, they may not understand how you're representing the work that you're doing. So what advice would you have for people that kind of hone their skills of being good storytellers on behalf of their company and sustainability?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I would say, and by the way, that is like, that's going to be true for every business, but it's so important in a business where some element of passion or cause is a key element of the business. Because it's harder to separate than your emotions from, like your feeling about the cause or the passion from the other person's feelings. And it's hard not to take it personally sometimes. So I would say, how do you go about telling that story and honing that story? Honestly, I don't think there's any better way I've had my founders do it than just repeating it. You have to tell it out loud to people, one, first, who care about you, and then two, initially and critically important, who don't care about you. You really don't, and I don't mean they don't care about you in general as a concept, humanity, of course, that's great. But what I mean is they don't have an interest in sparing your feelings. Like you need people in your life who you can talk to about this thing and who you can pitch about this thing, who aren't interested in your feelings first and foremost. Don't talk to your spouse, don't talk to your children, don't talk to your best friend, don't talk to those, talk to them as well. But you need to get the story in front of people who are less interested in your feelings than the idea. And so, and by doing that, what you'll find is what they care about. And if you find those patterns and they keep talking about, you've got a list of 10 things and they keep talking about number three is probably the most important thing to move up to the top. Even if you think it's three, there's two other things that are way more important. You probably need to talk about three first, because that's probably the widest audience. And again, this is if you're trying to build a business. Business requires the participation of other people. So telling that story just requires you to adapt at some level to the other people, the hearers, because you can't, it's not storytelling unless you have both sides.
Yeah, in about 10 minutes, we're going to start taking questions, and it looks like some of the Q&A is filling up. So Adam, I'll just like read through those as we go when we get there. Obviously, artificial intelligence has become ubiquitous with tech startups. Essentially, if you're not mentioning AI in some way, shape, or form, it's almost penciled in as a red flag. What I find fascinating about it is true AI, like the people who are doing something that's super solid within the space, is actually small in comparison to the people who are leveraging AI as part of their company. I feel like sustainability is the same thing. There are true sustainability companies, and then people are using sustainability as a buzzword. Yeah. How do these companies, the true sustainability companies, stand out in this environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say probably similarly to the AI companies that are real AI companies, they will really struggle because they'll take it personally that everybody else gets the shine from them, and they're the only ones actually doing it. So sustainability ultimately is about creating essentially a virtuous circle in business, right? If you're talking, and you can do it on all levels, you can do it in a lot of ways, but if you're creating a circle that repeats itself, and so the waste, you're getting closer and closer to zero waste. If you're able to do that, that is rare. That is special. That's not typical. And actually, by the way, I just literally 3 days ago one of my portfolio companies, and I won't say who, but asked me a similar question that is like dead on, kind of on target for what you're saying, because they are building something sustainable. A piece of their business is truly sustainable, but not all of it. But they're like, well, these other people are claiming to be sustainable, and they're not, and they're clearly not. But like, how much can you actually distinguish? The reality is, I would not spend my time, and I told this to my portco, I would not spend my time trying to convince most people of the difference, because most people don't need to appreciate the difference. That's just a market reality. Like founders and builders, entrepreneurs build 10 things on their first product, and it can do 10 things great. But most people, if you're talking about a really, really big business, will only ever use the top two, right? Like there's lots and lots of things that that Amazon can do, but mostly I buy, Q-tips, and I get refills for like bad sweatshirts and stuff like that. Like that's what I do on Amazon most of the time. It could do a million other things, but mostly it's people like me who are getting their Q-tips and toothbrushes sent to them, on a consistent schedule. So most founders are building these really elaborate things that are super involved and impressive and incredible. But if you're talking mass market, it's the first one or two things that really matter. So my first piece of advice is don't spend time explaining to those people the difference. They don't care most of the time. The other side of it is, the people who actually understand the difference will appreciate that you can appreciate the difference if it starts to matter, if it matters in an important moment. And that's hard to know. I think that's a really hard, sort of value judgment to make. When does it actually matter? Now, obviously, if you're in front of those people, you talk about that. You bring it up, you demonstrate your expertise. Always take the time to demonstrate your expertise as a founder. But that's about recognizing your audience again. Like, who am I in front of? And can these people appreciate the difference between machine learning and AI and true AI? Because lots of people are just talking about either AI wrappers that are, vaporware around OpenAI, or machine learning, and we've been doing that for years. I mean, AI at some level is machine learning, but so like, can this audience appreciate the difference and then take the time to explain, demonstrate your expertise? That makes sense. But the unfortunate reality, I think, is most people don't need to care, don't need to appreciate the difference. So as long as you serve their needs, they're happy.
So the basic fundamentals as an entrepreneur is around tracking your progress and making sure that you have demonstrable movement, hopefully up and to the right. And we both know that journey is not necessarily always up and to the right. But when I think about sustainability companies, I think one of the additional challenges they have is to have KPIs that are showcasing the results of what they're saying they do. Can you speak to, how these companies should be tracking results and showcasing that they're actually benefiting through a sustainable model the way that they are hoping to, deploy?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. So I'll talk about one of my portcos again, and it's a sustainable, essentially it's a sustainable clothing model. So, creating sustainable clothing that goes out and then can be bought back and then recycled to make more clothing. So, the initial kind of push is like, okay, we've got clothing that people want to buy. That's kind of the mass market appeal. It's good enough that people will buy it and they will enjoy it. And that's kind of like the first two layers of the product. They sort of you don't have to care about the sustainability in order to, buy the product initially. But if you do care about sustainability, you care about not just selling casual clothes over and over and over, and Walmart selling more, and Target selling more, and Kohl's selling more, and you're just one more group selling clothes. You care about the fact that those clothes get bought back and then recycled and put back into circulation. So that's where the KPI comes in, right? That's where that KPI comes and really matters. What is the thing that actually differentiates you from the people in the first two categories of your product that don't have to care about your sustainable model? Where do you actually differentiate yourself? Where does it actually matter that you care about sustainability? And then highlighting that like crazy. Absolutely, I agree with you on that. That is the piece of your deck that you definitely include with the people who would care about sustainability. And you always include yourself. You always measure yourself, because one, you care about it. Like hopefully you actually care about it. And it's legit. It's not just a way to kind of sell more stuff. But two, it will matter. It will attract the kind of people, investors, customers, potential partners, and all that who actually care about it as well. So if it matters to you on the front end, and you're measuring the thing that differentiates you on the back end, you'll attract the right kinds of partners, which facilitates growth. Again, you can kind of get away with the first two. Nobody has to know about it initially, but down the road, you do want to be measuring the differentiator because it'll attract the right partners.
So you and I are on stage quite often, and
Yeah.
you know as well as I do that time flies when you're, representing
true.
a topic, right? We're on the bottom half of this half hour, and we want to take 10 or 15 minutes on Q&A. So in about 3 minutes or so, Adam, anything additionally that you want to mention or represent around sustainability? And I know that covers a lot, and I know you could probably do it for way more than 3 minutes, but try to keep on time.
Yeah, for sure. No, so I would say there's two other pieces that are really important, I think, to ask yourself if you're building a sustainable model. Because again, I think there's a lot of there could be a lot of passion up front, and like total, it makes perfect sense to get into it for that reason. You can be passionate about creating a circular model in lots of ways in your business. But two questions you should also ask yourself: how innovative or adaptive is your actual solution? Sometimes it's great to be the better mousetrap, but sometimes, and that's fine. Like that's a legitimate way to grow a business, but also ask yourself, how innovative or adaptive is this? Am I just adding to the problem I think I'm trying to solve? Or am I bringing a new solution to the market? That's something to ask yourself. And then relatedly, how likely or how built are we to scale? So that can be difficult sometimes in a circular business model. Like the scaling is absolutely different. And creating the virtuous cycle can take longer because by its very nature, you're slowing down the output because you're bringing some of it back. So asking yourself the real hard question about how innovative or adaptive your model is and are you built to scale, I think up front before you build the business is super critical. Don't just jump in because you care about it, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. And then be surprised that you're not, adaptive or innovative and built to scale on the back end. Like do that work up front, I would say.
So we are at 30 minutes, and just kind of keep pace. I'm going to start talking about some of the Q&A. Before we get there, Adam, I just want to, everybody on this call, if you're interested in applying to a Techstars Accelerator, you can go to techstars.com and you'll see the application process. It explains what an accelerator is, our approach in it. It'll give you testimonials. And, for exploration, it's a great place to get the information you need on accelerators like Techstars. We also have provided some of our best learnings in toolkit.techstars.com. And so you can actually go through video tutorials about how to build all the elements of your business. If you're looking for a job and potentially with one of our companies that is associated with sustainability, you can go to jobs.techstars.com. And if you're interested in learning the investor lens in general, you can also go to venturedeals.techstars.com. I think that's what it is. And see Brad Feld and others giving their advice about how to navigate the investment landscape. So Adam, I've got several questions, and I'm going to ask them directly how they're written. So you and I might have to dig in a little bit deeper in some of these, and we'll go from there. But I'll start with Grace, who was patient and posted within the first few minutes.
Thanks,
Grace. What is your prediction about the involvement of sustainability in marketplace?
Marketplace. So I'm assuming we're talking about building some kind of sustainable marketplace, or the possibility of having a sustainable market, or sustainability as the cornerstone of your marketplace. Is that how you would answer that, John?
So Grace actually responded again and said, what do you think will be the solution to provide sustainability to the construction materials waste industry? So I think you can choose your own adventure on which one you want to answer.
Fair enough. Well, first of all, I would say that the marketplace thing, there are some people in that space, the sustainability marketplace space, which is essentially aggregators bringing together anybody who's interested in sustainability, which is typically like it usually is a products or services market. like a Grove. I think Grove Collaborative is the group I think that's doing that in the sustainability, or one of the groups that's doing that in the sustainability space. Now, in terms of sustainability to the marketplace more broadly, like sort of the heavy materials, the construction materials market, the heavy industry market. I think we talked a little bit about that, which is like sustainability now is starting to essentially, go horizontal and say, well, it's possible to build things in all sectors that work more than just kind of a one-way, shoot the product out, who cares what happens on the other end. So I think that is absolutely happening. And we talked, a little bit about like Heliogen, Microcycles doing some of that work, and the AMP Robotics folks. So yeah, that's definitely, Grace, you're on target. It's happening.
So I'm going to read Mark's question. Mark is going to give some points and then ask a question on it. So it's going to be a bit, but he represented sustainability has several key axes. One is a sustainable planet. I've worked in conservation of biodiversity for 30 years. When can we expect the sustainability efforts to result in on-the-ground funding for conservation of nature in a meaningful way and not just highlight project for some corporation? Carbon credits have promise, but the current free-for-all and consequential low carbon credit prices have dampened this area, justifiably, in my opinion. So we need this discussion to include connecting sustainability to conservation of nature.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And I think ultimately, well, so there's two parts of this, right? There's sustainability as a concept in kind of corporate and business life. And then there's sustainability as just a people, a human concept. I think corporations are motivating. One of the things people like about corporations, and it's also one of the things they don't like, is they're motivated by their own self-interests, right? So if they have a target and they see they can hit it and they see they can make money while doing it, then they're great at shooting at that target. But absolutely, there should be no expectation that they're going to meet all the targets for sure. They are built in their own images, and they're not meant to be, completely the solution. The planetary solutions, I think, do have to create or sort of take advantage of those incentives and take advantage of the motivations of the corporations. Like you say, I thought the carbon credits was actually sort of a unique solution, but that was unique 20 years ago. It's not unique now. It's pretty much it's kind of a spoils system. It's a way to, you used to be able to buy the right to buy an indulgence, right? And sin all you wanted because you bought your way out. Like that's kind of how that's operating now. So we absolutely need new governmental kind of baseline solutions, I think, because sustainability does matter sort of at a fundamental level. I think it has to involve governments and larger movements of people, because governments are how, we as people make group decisions. It's for better or for worse. That is what it is. So it has to involve more than just the corporate life, but using corporate incentives and their own kind of self-motivation, I think, is super important for government, because it's a nice way to kind of fast track like large movement. Because if you're talking about something like, how many, imagine this, how many t-shirts do you think Target sells every year? Like every year, think about the t-shirts that Target sells. Think about, the nondescript ones like this one. I think I probably bought at Target. Think about the ones that they print that are, licensed. Think about that. Think about just the industry it takes to like create, ship, facilitate purchase of, reship. Like think about just t-shirts at Target. So absolutely, we need governments to incentivize corporations to act more sustainably, but we also need governments to, be responsible as well.
So Adam, we're the worldwide network that helps entrepreneurs succeed, and
we are.
We generally have impact globally. In fact, we do community events in about 170 countries. So what ends up happening for people like you and I is sometimes we're asked to regionalize view of entrepreneurship, or in this case, sustainability. So if this were a game show, I would give you a red button so that you could hit pass if you don't have an answer for it. But I'm going to ask the question anyway. So what are the top 3 startup topics to address main challenges in the sustainability agenda in KSA, so in Saudi Arabia,
oh wow,
in terms of their program Vision 2030? So again, that button is available for you, and you know,
I'm reaching for the button, John. I would say this. The one thing I will say, first of all, second of all, the one thing I will say is obviously energy is going to be the number one topic that has to be addressed, and whether it be the balance between oil and gas and other alternative fuels, that is absolutely the number one topic. So there's no question, and I don't think, and this is Adam talking. I know I still work for Techstars too, but I don't think there is I used to also be an oil and gas lawyer, so I did both sides of this. This work. I don't think there is an easy choice for anybody in this, right? So I don't think that oil and gas can say we don't need sustainable solutions, and I don't think sustainable energy folks can say we don't need oil and gas right now. It's just not reality. Like, we all still need each other, and as we move forward towards whatever we're moving forward to, I think a less striated kind of either or solution or approach to the problem, I think, is super constructive. Either or is useful for starting the conversation, but we're in the conversation now. I mean, there's no question that energy is an issue we all have to deal with, and I think we all have to recognize we're working together.
One of the things, yeah, pass. One of the things I love about Techstars, Adam, is we generally get ahead of the curve. And a good representation of some of what you were just talking about is the partnership with Equinor and what we've done in Norway with moving to future of energy for a sovereign fund associated with oil, and bringing entrepreneurs in collisions with those people who are trying to advance to the future. So Hugo has a question that represents acronyms, which you and I are around all the time. So
get a lot of
are there any frameworks that are especially useful for telling the story of your climate tech startup in terms of technology, commercialization, and market? I've heard of technology readiness level, TRL, commercial inflection point, CIP, and adoption readiness level, ARL. What is most widely used?
Probably commercial readiness, I would say. That is probably what I see the most, although I don't know that is necessarily the most effective, to be honest, because it sort of assumed, it does what I asked it to initially, actually earlier, which is take the market into account, which I think is great and super important. And you've got to, you're sort of not doing your job if you don't do that. But I think adoption is also such a key metric here. Like, there can be, we're having this conversation currently. It's live. If you go to yahoo.com on EVs, right? EVs are a real innovation. Like, there's no question they're an innovation. There's no question that, folks like Tesla and Ford have taken the conversation, Nissan, there's lots of others too. I'm sure I'm forgetting, sorry for forgetting you, but have taken the conversation forward on EVs, decades, like years and years. We're doing way better than we were before. Our infrastructure is way more prepared, but adoption is still a question. Are they too expensive? Is the starting point too expensive? And that's not just a commercial question. That's also like a government question, right? Subsidies. That's also just a sort of a circumstantial of finance, like an economic environment question. Our people were buying trucks like crazy 10 years ago, and they were way overpriced. Like, the margins on trucks are nuts, but we had the money 10 years ago. Now, like, as the economy constrains, things constrain. So EVs are facing an adoption question, adoption readiness question, which is, I think they're going to do fine, but like, having the balance between a few of those is really important. And I think, honestly, this goes back to storytelling. Can the founder tell the story? And you have to show sort of you're aware of enough that's going on around, like, what you're building, that you can effectively tell the story that, yeah, we're ready for market, but also people are ready for what we're bringing to market. So those are my two.
I love good segues, and you just ran into one. So the next question is, if sustainability isn't the leading issue we are addressing, but there is a residual impact solving it, i.e. reducing returns for retailers inherently reduces carbon emissions emitted. How do we go about pitching this? Do you advise creating different decks, like a sustainability deck?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say no on the separate decks, first of all, only because I think a cohesive story, like if you care about sustainability and you're building it into your business model, tell that story. It's part of the story. So I would say no on the separate deck. Now, the reality is you're going to have a million decks for your company, but they should all tell the same story, just in different levels. So don't create one that's sustainability and one that's commercial, because that to me is two stories. There should be 15 of your decks. One is 2 slides, one is 3 slides, one is 7, one is, but they're all telling the same story. So I would say keep them together. But how do you tell that? Well, again, it kind of goes back to audience. There will be some people who don't care about that, and that especially is a little bit tangential because there's no bottom line impact, right? It's ethereal. Like the economic impact is or the economic gain is going to somebody else. The accrual is going to somebody else. So if you can't kind of tell that story to the bottom line, there'll be some investors who just don't care about that. And you have to be okay letting them not care if you want to take their money, if you want to work with them. So I would say that's a tough question, but I would separate out that information. I wouldn't pretend it's on the bottom line. I wouldn't be like, oh, and there's also this phantom, TAM or addressable market out here that we never get the money, but it's also saving this. I wouldn't do that because that seems false. Work to make it one cohesive story. So, that wasn't a great answer.
So I'm going to hold you accountable for the rest of your life on this next question.
Oh, shoot.
And so whatever you come up with, we're going to actually post it on Techstars.com at some point.
Fair
It'll
enough.
be
Okay.
attributed to Adam. When do you think clean renewable energy, hydro, solar, nuclear, wind, geothermal, etc., will completely replace coal and oil?
It's 2026. No, I'm just kidding. Wow, completely replaced. Okay, that gives me a great out. I honestly don't think it will ever. Now, I think we're if it ever does, it's 100 years. It's 200 years out, not because we need large scale, massive, oil and gas refineries always churning, but because the energy needs that we have currently gotten used to and currently made ourselves accustomed to are really high. Like the ability to create, like, think about like a hydroelectric dam and what it can power. Typically, they're being used to power things like towns and small cities. And typically that's not for 24 hours. That's not sustained continuous power, because there's also there's also battery storage needs then. And actually battery storage can be pretty like toxic and energy difficult to produce and can take up a lot of space. And so there is sort of an inertia. There's like a physics limit, I think, to some of this that we haven't yet reached. We still need to push the boundaries on all of it in terms of sustainable energy. But that oil and gas has been really helpful in overcoming and doesn't have the problem of it has other problems, but it doesn't have the problem of limited energy production or limited in time in some ways. So I don't think we're close to being done with it. I just think we can reduce a ton of our usage. We're lazy in the way that we approach energy right now because we've gotten used to really abundant, cheap, relatively cheap fuel energy. I think we need to reduce some of that. I don't know that we're getting rid of it anytime soon. Sorry.
So, Adam, we are through the questions, and I think we made it through relatively unscathed.
All right,
I have a good friend and former colleague on this call, Brian Breckenridge. So, hey, Brian, I just want to say he's from my LinkedIn days, and wanted to say hello there. But I am at Techstars John on most social. So you can find me on X, Threads, connect with me in those spaces, Instagram, happy to engage. And thoroughly enjoyed the time. Adam, we should do this more often because I just enjoy the give and take, and I learned quite a bit from you in the process. I agree. So we'll make something like this happen again. For all of you, if we can be of any help at Techstars to support you on your journey, that's what we're built for. And so lean in. And again, Techstars.com will answer most of your questions about who we are and what we're about and how you can apply to the accelerators and when they are and deadlines. But I'll leave last words to Adam. And so I'll sign out from here. John Hill, Evangelist at Techstars, thank you for spending time with us. Adam, to you.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I echo that. I would love to do that again. You're always good to talk to. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate you spending time with us. This has been a lot of fun. Sustainability for me is like, I came from the oil and gas field as a lawyer, and to be able to talk about this in the context of investing, I'm so excited about what so many startups and so many and even mature companies are doing in this space. I've seen a ton of growth over the last 15, 20 years. It's really encouraging to me, and I think it's great that we bring people out and you guys get excited about it. So I'm at LinkedIn, Adam Hugh Phillips, Hugh. That is one of my father's middle names. He has two. He gave me one of them, Adam Hugh Phillips. And if you want to reach me on LinkedIn, that's a great way to reach me there. If you do send me a message, just say like it was on this that we met, because I won't remember otherwise. But yeah, would love to connect with anybody there. So very excited to spend some time with you guys. Thanks,
Absolutely incredible insight provided today, guys. Thank you all so much for joining us today on this fireside chat discussing tech startups driving the green revolution. So if you're a founder and you have questions regarding Techstars, you may email us at startups@techstars.com. And finally, do feel free to join us in any of our digital events. I did post the Techstars events page on the chat, so feel free to join us and continue learning. We craft these for your startup journey. So thank you all so much again, and we'll see you on the next one.